Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let's gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the gracious mercy and abundant blessing so we can deliver our material through this video. Salawat and salam to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, who has brought us from the darkness to the lightness of this era. The Honorable, our lecturer, Mem Farida Repelitawati Kembaran M. Hum, as the lecturer of translation subject. Before we begin our presentation today, we would like to introduce ourselves first. We are from TBI 4 4th semester as the third group. My name is Tasya Tribuanaswary as the speaker, and my friend Milleni Maraya as the speaker, and Ilham Harahap as the speaker. The first explanation will be explained by our friend Milleni Maraya. Time and place is yours.
Okay guys, I'm Milleni Maraya as the first speaker from the third group. So in this video, I would like to tell you about the kinds of translation based on Roman Jacobson. So according to him, there are three kinds of translation. What are them? The first is interlingual translation, and then there are interlingual translation, and the last is intersemiotic translation. And now we're going to the first kinds of translation, that is intralingual translation. So intralingual translation means we transform or we translate a text into another text according to the interpreter's or the translator's interpretation. So but in the same language, for example, like Putri by Khairil Anwar Aku, and then the translators translated into prose in Indonesian. The other example is like a novel Harry Potter from J.K. Rowling, and then the translators translate some words in the book, but she changed it into another in the same language but another word but have the same meaning. That is intralingual translation. So the point of intralingual translation is we translate from one text to another text but in translator's interpretation and in the same language. And now we're going to the second kind, that is interlingual translations. Interlingual translation means we translate from the source language into the target language. It is the common kinds of translation because this is the most kinds of translation that people use in the world. The example of interlingual translation we can see in the book on page 31. That is a poem by Andre Harjana and translated by Meg Glynn. And yeah, he just translated it from Indonesian to English. But it's not just about translate a poetry, it can be translate a book or the other text, as long as the translation is from the source language to the target language. And now we're going to the last kinds of translation according to Roman Jacobson. That is intersemiotic translation. So in intersemiotic translation, we transform or we translate from one text into another sign or system. So it not translate from one text to another text. It translate to another kinds, not another kinds. It translate into another system. And let's take the example for intersemiotic translation. And all of us has known the movie of Harry Potter. Harry Potter, it starts from a novel. So a novel is a text and a movie is an action. So that is the example of intersemiotic translation. That is translate a text into another system. That is a movie. And it still has the same title, Harry Potter. And let's take the other example. It is from traffic lamp. On the traffic lamp there are three colors and we can interpret the colors into a text. That is also called as intersemiotic translation. And the last example from intersemiotic translation is this picture. This picture is a picture, not a text, but we can translate it into a text. So it also called as intersemiotic translation. So the point of intersemitic translation is we translate from a text into another sign or system, but it also translates from a sign or system into a text. That is the point. And I think that's all for the first material. Thank you.
I'm as the second presenter. We will present about one, perfect translation, and the second is adequate translation. The first, what is perfect translation? A perfect translation is purely informative, such as seen in the public or in the public place. So a perfect translation looks natural for a native speaker of the language. And there are three parts of translation. The first is original author, the second is translator, and the third is the final reader or listener. A perfect translation does exist because it comes from natural looks from every side and based on sense of language, culture, and vocabulary building. For example, we can see an example on the book. Salju. Batang-batang itu adalah kenangan. Snow, branches are a memory. Yang semakin kurus, now growing ever more pale, dan akhirnya hilang di balik salju. To be lost behind the snow. The second, adequate translation. Adequate translation for readers who aim to get the general information of the text for fun reading. Everybody knows that the translator is responsible for an adequate fiction translation. Proper fiction translations which shows and express all the beauty of the source language into the target one. Adequate translation is not about translate word to word or some translator thoughts in the subject of the novel. No, because translation subject is make readers are easy to catch the information from the text itself. So, an adequate translation concerned on flexible and smooth translation. The last presenter will be explained by Ilham Harahap. Time and place is yours.
Hello guys, my name is Ilham Harahap and I am the third speaker from the third group. So I will explain you about our next materials. It's about composite translation and research and technical translation. So first, composite translation. So composite translation is a serious translation of literatures. This translation is made well enough to make the message, make the meaning and the type of the source text can be well transformed into the target language. For example, the translation of The Old Man and the Sea will be translated to be Laki-laki tua dan laut. Or the other example is The Adventure of Huckleberry Finn, which will be translated into Petualangan Huckleberry Finn. So I think that's all for composite translation. So let's jump to our next materials. It's about research and technical translation. So this kind of translation is made for translating texts related to science or techniques. For example, translating books related to computer science from English to Indonesia in order to get an information about computer in Indonesia. So I think that's all from me.
This is the end of our presentation today. Sorry for the mistaken. For the last we say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.